Hey guys, today we're going to be moving forward in math. It's lesson 7.5, comparing fraction, factors, and products. Okay? So this first slide is super important. The objective today is understanding how scaling and fraction multiplication work together. What is scaling? Scaling is changing the size of something. For example, a modeled car is a scaled down version of the actual size car. You can scale the size of an object smaller or larger. You can scale up or down. When you're doing this on your own, this is going to be an interactive slide. And on the side, it's going to say in the text, give an example of an object you might scale up or down. Okay, so if you can do that, that would be awesome. How do we use scaling in math? Well, one example of how we use scaling in math is the place value chart. When we move to the left in the place value chart, as you can see here, our numbers get bigger. The numbers are scaling up. When we move to the right in the place value chart, we're scaling the numbers down. And many of you probably remember that when we were talking about moving in the place value chart, we would say things like, all right, well, when I move this way, I'm multiplying by 10. I'm multiplying by another 10 and vice versa. And when we're moving to the right, we are dividing by 10. Okay. So multiplying scales our numbers up, dividing scales our numbers down when we're working with whole numbers. It's not the same for when we're working with fractions, which we are going to be working with fractions today. So how will I use this in today's lesson? Today we're going to look at factors, which is the numbers that we multiply, and we're going to compare them to our product based on some rules of scaling. We're basically going to be looking at our factors and guessing what our answer is going to be based on some rules. So here's rule number 1. When I multiply two fractions, my answer, my product, will always be less than both factors. When I multiply the factor 2/3 and I multiply the factor 3/4, my answer is 6/12, and if I simplify it, it's 1/2. The answer 1/2 is less than 3/4. It is also less than 3/4, right? 2/3, when I benchmark it, is close to 1, and so is 3/4, but a half is less than both of those factors. So rule number 1 is actually the easiest one to remember. Whenever you multiply two fractions, your product will always be less than both factors all the time. Rule number 2. Rule number 2 states that whenever I multiply a fraction by 1, the product will always be equal to the fraction but less than 1. Guys, this is the identity property. Whenever I multiply anything by 1, the answer will be always itself. So 2/3 times 1 is 2/3. Another way you can show the number 1 is 5/5 or 12/12 or 4/4. They all equal 1. Sometimes they like to present it in a different way, but you're still multiplying by 1. And whenever I multiply anything by itself, the answer is itself. Now, sometimes what they like to do is they'll say 2/3 times 1 is greater than, less than, or equal to, but then they'll compare it to 1. Well, my answer is less than 1. Okay? Rule number 3. Whenever I multiply a fraction by a whole number or improper fraction, the product will be greater than the fraction but less than the whole number. It depends on what I'm comparing it to. So when I multiply 2/3 times 5, 5 is a whole number. When I multiply, my answer is 10/3 or 3 1/3. I converted it to a mixed number. My answer, if I look and I compare, my answer is bigger than the fraction. Right now, my fraction is 2/3, and my answer is 3 1/3. When I compare those, that's definitely bigger. But when I compare my answer to the whole number, my whole number is 5, and my answer is 3 1/3. It's less than the whole number. So see how that works? When I multiply the fraction times a whole number, my answer is bigger than the fraction, like it is here, but it's smaller than the whole number when I compare them. Okay. So these are rules to help you work. What do I always say, guys? Work smarter, not harder. What if I don't remember these rules? Well, simple. Solve the equation first and then compare your answer afterwards. All right, let's do some modeling here, guys. 6 times 2/5 will be. First of all, I have to think about what are my factors. My factors are a whole number